You're struggling with outcomes with athletes and you're wondering what's one thing that I'm missing and need to include in my framework moving forward. I'm going to answer that in this video. My name is Dr. Garcia. I'm a sports physical therapist and I help providers just like yourself improve patient outcomes and patient satisfaction. When we look at why athletes aren't progressing, it is there's multiple factors here, but I'm going to put this into equation, a 4-step equation that'll help you determine what you're not doing and where you're stuck, and then pinpoint exactly what you need to do to put yourself on that right track so you're having consistent results with your athletes, so you can have more of them on your schedule, you can have consistency across them, they have less people dropping off, and you have less inactive people on your schedule. So if you want to be able to have more athletes on your schedule, utilize this framework. Now, the first piece of this whole process is to set expectations. This is the hardest thing for a sports physical therapist. It means you got to commit, you have to have buy-in, you have to have passion and belief in yourself that this plan is going to be the best thing for you. So before you get tempted to talk about an exercise because that's your favorite thing, you want to choose the best set of exercises because that's really going to create the outcome. Well, it's a lot of crap, because ultimately what you need to do is understand that nothing is going to go right if you don't have the plan in place. And this is where you set the expectations with the athlete, the patient. So let's start with an ankle sprain. And this person wants to just get back to soccer. They want in 2 months, they want to be able to participate in their high school soccer league. And it's the summer and they have 2 months to be able to start practice. So you have an 8-week or 2-month timeline to get this person better. And it's a grade 1 ankle sprain. And we know through soft tissue healing guidelines that a grade 1 mild ankle sprain is going to take 4 to 6 weeks just purely on tissue healing guidelines. 3 days for inflammatory phase, it's going to take you 14 days for proliferative, and it's going to take you 4 to 6 weeks for remodeling. So perfect. We know they're in that window. They'll have 2 weeks to get back to conditioning, multi-directional changes in positioning. Perfect. We can do this in 8 weeks. What you're going to do is you're going to start with an 8-week timeline and work backwards. So if you're going to allow, we know that it's 4 to 6 weeks to be able to heal. So we have 2 weeks to be able to do conditioning. So the last week would be integration back into soccer, multi-directional changes, and contact. Okay, perfect. That would be week 7 to 8. Week 6 would be modified practice, turning, cutting, pivoting, but no contact. Beautiful. Week 5 would be introduction to linear running and lateral running with no change in direction. Week 5 would be plyometrics, vertically, linear, and lateral. Great. At weeks 4, we're introducing light impact deceleration exercises, maybe a little bit of light acceleration, and you work backwards like this. And so when that athlete is in front of you, you can say, oh, that's fine, that's actually perfect. So here's what we're going to do. Week 7, you're going to be going back to practice. Week 6, you're doing modified. At week 5, you're doing plyometrics, and you can kind of work that backward. And when you can see that athlete, they're like, oh, that's what to expect. And the problem becomes most physical therapists, instead of doing that, what they're going to do is load them with 12 exercises to hopefully get this inflammation out. When that athlete says, hey, can I do this in 8 weeks? What they typically say is, well, let's just take it week by week. Let's just see how it goes and how you feel. Well, when reality is you don't feel confident and comfortable be able to commit to 8 weeks. Why? Because you don't want to be wrong. So now you're putting that patient at a disadvantage because they don't know what to expect. So this is where you're going to start. The expectation. Perfect. It's within a healing timeline. It's reasonable. The athlete wants it. Perfect. We've agreed to that. So step 1, set the expectation. Now, maybe you've had therapy with them, and in week 5, they've slowed down. They had a flare-up. They went too hard, too fast. And instead of waiting till week 6 to go to modified practice, they did it at week 5. So now they have a flare-up. Now they're like, they have a setback, more swelling, all these other things. And now you're like, oh my goodness, now that backs us up. I don't know if we're going to be able to make it on time for that week 8. Can we push this out? Or what do we need to do and create a little wiggle room inside the return to plateaus and everything else? So the first part was, what was the expectation? What was the standard of the plan? Great. Where's their current progress, and are they in line with that? For a lot of people, they don't have the plan and they just get frustrated and they just continue to tell the patient, let's just take it slower then, when in reality you're just delaying the process and not allowing this person to return to the time point they want. So the first one is set the plan. Then when somebody is not going to plan, or they're going to plan, you always need to review the progress. From there, you're going to pick 1 or 2 points that need to be improved to help reset this person. So for instance, if they went to modified practice at week 5, what you're going to do is you should have waited till week 7. So you're going to come back to week 4 and start with your plyos, your lateral acceleration. You're going to spend time there until they're no longer inflamed. You're going to put an ankle brace on them. You're going to spend a week in that same phase. You're going to try and jump to week 6, but it's not going to be possible. So you're going to go slow on that initial flare up, get them to the proliferative phase for 14 days, get them to 2 weeks out. So that puts them at 7 weeks. And then you're going to get them back to modified practice. So you basically had to wait and extend that week 5 because they flared up during that time point. Now, what you have a choice here is you extended the week 5 into week 7. Now at week 7, you have to decide, are you going to go all in? What's the motivation to go back to practice and actually play? If the person's not, there's not a huge, urgency to do it, then start week 6 at week 7 and push them out a week or 2. Now, if there's urgency, you're going to have to put all your eggs in one basket and just go straight into a multi-directional change of speed and very, very modified practice, so that way on week 8, they haven't done full practice, but at least they have the best chance possible. So you're going to pick 1 or 2 points to modify in that plan. Somewhere in there, you messed up or that athlete messed up. Either you communicated and set the expectation, hey, next week you're doing this, hey, next week you're doing this, and they did it, then that's a responsibility. But if they didn't have a knowledge of what they did wrong, it's because you failed as a leader to put them in a good place. So start with the expectation, review their current progress, pick 1 or 2 things, and then have an honest conversation. That's the 4th part. The thing you dread. You dread the first part and the last part, the buns of this burger. You don't have the confidence to create a plan and commit to it because you don't want to be wrong. That's the hard part, which is the hardest part, the most important part. And then the last part is you don't like having that awkward, honest conversation of, listen, here's what we need to do. We set this plan. You went too fast, too soon. Now we have to extend this. I want to tell you, if you want to play in 8 weeks, I need you to complete this exactly to the plan. The problem for a lot of times, if you didn't set a plan, you can't have an honest conversation because you were at fault. So what are you going to tell them? You didn't listen to me? Well, the reality is you didn't tell them. So whose fault is it? So sports PTs avoid the framework and the plan to set up. And number 2, they avoid the honest conversation. So what happens? This patient's just coming in with no expectation. Every day they're like, am I going to get better today? What am I doing? And the PT, they don't really care. They just feel like, well, at least I'm helping them. I'm doing bare minimum. Well, when you're working with an athlete who's motivated, you can't live on bare minimum. And you've been able to live on bare minimum because you went probably through a normal insurance process where you get inactive people and they don't have timelines, they don't have urgency, and they're not really motivated. So you used that framework of laziness and you brought it over to somebody who's motivated, and that's the problem. So if you want to work with more motivated people, you have to learn how to set plans and have conversations with them along that journey. It's confidence. It's basically the ability to say, you are not listening to me and this is what we need. And if you don't feel that this is a priority, you're going to mess it up, not me. But the plan has to be there so they can visually see what is the thing I am going to mess up. So step 1, create the expectation. Step 2, review that current progress. Step 3, figure out 1 or 2 points that you're going to modify to get them back on track. And number 4, tell them what they did wrong, or you acknowledge what you did wrong to set them back. And then you just repeat that process. And you should be doing this every 4 weeks. In reality, you're doing it every week. But when you work with pro athletes or high-end athletes, you're doing it daily or weekly. When you're working with community members who just do general activity, you're doing this monthly. So constantly do this, and you're always reevaluating, which means you're always prepared, you're always checking in on your patients. And the problem is for a lot of sports PTs, because you're inundated with documentation and inactive people, and you finally get an athlete on your schedule, you use the lazy way to finally do it with an athlete, and all you do is add more exercises, add more weight, add a vest, add more plateaus with no framework. You flare them up and it's your responsibility. So there's no conversation, there's no expectations, there's no progress, and that's where you're stuck. So the next time you're stuck with an athlete and they're not progressing at the rate you want, use this framework. It'll set them onto the best journey possible, and you develop your confidence. And that is how you start to work with more athletes and gain that confidence as a true sports PT. Try it and enjoy. Hi, if you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell notification for my weekly tips on treating cash pay patients, becoming that expert in your community, and thriving in business. Thanks, and I'll see you soon.